good afternoon, everybody, and a very happy new year to all of you. I'm Sabrina Sabai. I'm the director of Join Hands, and on behalf of our team, I would like to welcome everybody here to the third webinar of our webinar series, The Value and Impact of Humane Education. I hope that everyone joining us today had a happy and healthy start to their year. We're really excited to kick this new year off with all of you today as you join from all of your locations all around the world. For those of our guests who are joining us again for the first time, this webinar series is being held as a part of our Caring for Life, or CFL, education program in Pakistan. CFL teaches children in primary school to treat people, animals, and the environment with respect and compassion. It's based on the United Nations, UNESCO's 4 pillars of education, and it complements the aims of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And those are a part of a global agreement, which is to transform our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The goal of the program is to help children develop character and virtue, to enhance civic harmony, and to foster pro-social citizenship. This program will be delivered in 50 primary schools in the Sindh province in just the first year of this 3-year pilot program. We aim to expand to hundreds of schools by the end of this pilot, thereby reaching thousands of children across the Sindh province. So it's really been a unique and incredible endeavor, and it couldn't be done without our partners on this project from the Government of Sindh, the Sindh Education Foundation, or SEF. In fact, this webinar series is specifically geared towards the SEF master trainers who play a valuable role in training all of the educators throughout Sindh on the principles of CFL education and how to deliver this program in classrooms. And it's through them that we'll be able to share this vision of caring for all forms of life. So I hope you'll all please join me in welcoming all of the master trainers to the webinar today. In addition to the master trainers, we have guests who are joining us from all around the world. So I would like to welcome all of you as well, and thank you so much for joining us. And finally, we have our 2 speakers who will cover material about humane education and animal and environmental welfare. Again, these presentations, just to remind everyone, will just be an overview of the issues that they are discussing. Unfortunately, given the time constraint, we can't go into great detail, so it will just be an introduction to these issues. But if you would like to learn more information about their topics, then you can either reach out to us after the webinar, and we'll also share information about how to learn more about their topics through their websites and their contact information as well. We will also have a Q&A session after both presentations, where you can also share your questions to the speakers in the Q&A feature on Zoom. And we'll do our very best to address all of the questions, or as many as we have time to do in the time remaining once the presentations are complete. For those of you who are not so familiar with the content of Caring for Life education, we're conducting these webinar sessions to provide the master trainers and all of you an opportunity to consider the scope of global issues that Caring for Life education touches upon. The purpose of CFL is to understand sentience and to teach children to have care and compassion for all living beings, so humans, animals, and the environment. It's this premise that lies at the root of every one of our presentation topics throughout this webinar series. These topics are not actually a part of the CFL curriculum, but they're being offered as a supplement to enhance the understanding of how broad the scope of these issues can extend. So with that, let's get to our presentations. We've been starting with an icebreaker activity for our master trainers before we begin each presentation for all of our webinars. Our presenters have provided us with some pretty thought-provoking questions, especially for today, and they're with respect to their topics that they're presenting on. And this is just to get everybody thinking about these issues. Now, generally, these questions really have no definite right or wrong answers. So just so that everyone knows, we're not looking for a right or wrong answer. And the purpose is just to get everyone thinking about these issues and to get a sense of where everyone's perspectives lie coming into this discussion. So I'd like to ask all of the trainers to please grab your red and green colored cards from your brochures, and to please make sure you hold your card nice and high when you answer the questions so that the presenters can see your responses. And for those of for our attendees who are joining the webinar today, we'll also be launching a poll, and that poll will have the exact same questions that we're asking the trainers so that you can also participate in answering these questions. All you have to do when that poll pops up on your window is just select the answers that apply to you when you see those questions pop up. So Mavish will probably be getting those up to you right away. So let's begin. First question, human rights and animal rights are of equal importance. Green card for true, red card for false. Okay. Second question, academic education is more important than life skill and humane education. True or false? True for green, red for false. I like that all the teachers are putting up red cards. Okay, third question. International training and experiences are less valuable than local education. Green for true, red for false. Okay. Fourth question. Gender is a social challenge faced when working with youth. Green for true, red for false. Okay, and last question. Social norms and traditions are a barrier to change. Green for true, red for false. You can see as we go through the questions, there's less certainty with the cards being held up. Okay, thank you, everyone. So Mavish will be launching those poll results so that everyone can see the results of the attendees answering those questions. I think what's interesting for us all to consider is that, and it's important to remember is that these issues are not always black and white, and that, oh, there are the poll results, so everyone can take a peek at that. So if you're curious about where everyone's answers lied. I think it's important to remember that people share different perspectives based on their own experiences and based on their own knowledge. So it's really great to have an opportunity for all of us to consider these differences in thought. And I think it's interesting for our presenters as well to understand what people's understandings or attitudes are about their respective topics, so that we can make sure that we center our discussion around that. So with that, let's get started with our first presentation. So our first speaker is Anas Al-Karaoke. Did I say that right, Anas? Okay. Well, Anas's career started in finance. His passion was actually youth work. He spent years volunteering in campaign work, and then he moved on to become a youth educator and a trainer on topics such as human rights, gender, and sport. In 2014, he joined the Palestinian Animal League as a project coordinator, where he managed various district activities for communities and youth, teaching them about how to be active influencers and change makers, and he ran awareness campaigns about animal protection. In addition to his work with PAL, Anas is an active trainer and project manager in local and international human rights sectors. In Ramallah, he has worked with the Higher Council for Youth and Sports, World Vision, and the Ma'an Development Center. Internationally, he has worked with Solidarity Tracks NGO in Greece and was a trainer for GeoCef Italy, where he facilitated the participation of Palestinian youth in international training courses to promote the importance of civic responsibility and active citizenship, social inclusion, and anti-discrimination. He has trained people about human rights, gender, and sport all throughout Europe, and has recently introduced programs in Palestine about intersectionality to promote intercultural learning. In 2016, Anas co-founded and is the current director of New Generation Organization, which aims to enhance the effectiveness and power of youth in creating a better social reality that allows them to lead within their communities. So I think it's clear that Anas has a very rich background in youth work, and I think that you know, when we talk about youth education and youth empowerment in challenging circumstances, there will be a lot of relevance with regards to access to and provision of education in remote or rural areas in any country, and in this case, Pakistan and Palestine. And while there's obvious differences, I think there are certain challenges that I imagine are universal when attempting to provide youth and communities with opportunities for growth and education. So it will be wonderful to get a taste of this through Anas's presentation and see where many of those similarities lie and where what we can take from those experiences to apply within the context of Pakistan and the CFL program. So please join me, everyone, in welcoming our first speaker, Anas Al-Karaoke. I hand it over to you, Anas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sabrina. It's my pleasure to meet you all, and it's very nice opportunity for me to meet people from Pakistan and also from other countries that they are with us today in the webinars. Basically, I will go through with you guys about our organizations, what we work and the things that we're doing here in Palestine and also in international level, and also we'll go through the political situation in Palestine, and then we will have some facts and some numbers I will telling you. But let me tell you my name, how I pronounce it, because Sabrina, she didn't pronounce the last name very well. So it's Anas Al-Karaoke. I'm Anas Al-Karaoke from a small village called Karaoke. It's near Nablus in occupied Palestine. And we'll start now with the presentation. I will share the screen about the presentation. So here is the New Generation Organization and the Palestinian Animal League. We are partners in different, we work in different topics, but we have a common ground when it comes to animal rights and the human rights. So New Generation and Bal League, it was established in 2011 in Palestine. The aim of the Palestinian Animal League in Palestine, it was to raise the awareness for the animal rights in Palestine. Since we have the Israeli occupation in Palestine, so it's the main issue that people focus on it. And when we were establishing the Palestinian Animal League, some people, they come and say, guys, what are you doing? There is there's a subject, it's much more important than what you are doing. But we tell them that the animal rights and the human rights, it's something mixed, and also the animals, they suffered from the occupation and from the people as well. So the aim, it was to raise the awareness about the animal topics and animal issues. So we started in 2011, and we have a group from people that are interested on such a things, and we start doing campaigning on villages, basically because in the village they have many animals. So that's why the start, it was from there, because people, they care about the animals more than other areas. So we start to build a groups from the, like, support a group from that area and to go out with them. Yes, and in New Generation, it was established in 2016, as Sabrina says, but before we established the organization, we were a group called Hope for Kids in Palestine. So we started in 2011 also as a group. We were in the university, we said, okay, let's do something for the community. So we create a page on Facebook, and we start posting that we're gonna do a meeting, and then we have meeting after that, and we start doing a campaigning in the Palestinian camps. And later on in the presentation, I will tell you about the camps, the refugees camps in Palestine, and also the refugees camps out of Palestine. So we started from that point, and we have, like, in 2014, we were like more than 1,000 volunteers around all over the occupied Palestine. And in 2016, here it comes when we say, okay, let's make it more bigger and more managing. So we we established a new generation organization, and we start our work from there. And the main goals, it was, we want to work about the education with youth, and we want to use also the sport as a method to deliver the human rights topics and the life skills topics and everything that regarding to the things that we are doing. So we take the sport as a main tools to deliver our messages, and here some of our activities and training course. So we work in many things, such as critical thinking, social and mental health, social media and communication. So the main things was to enter also these places and work with children. And here it comes to our target group, that they are children from 8 years to 16 years old. And then we said, okay, we want to work also with the youth. So also we have another target group from 18 to 30. So we teach the people that who are from 18 to 30 all the methods that new generation want to deliver for the kids, which is youth from many places in Palestine. And this youth, they go to their places and teach the kids in these areas about all the things that we work in a new generation. The main goals, as I said before, to search about the talent inside these kids and improvise it, let's say, and also to make it to get it out, and to help them also how to develop their skills, and teach them also how to coaching them, let's say, how to have the right path for your future in this level. And also we have many camp, which is youth camp, which is we do it in a summer, and also we do it we have some winter also camps. And here's some picture of a camp we do it last year, and we use the sport, as you see, as a method also to deliver the life skills things, which is the time management, and how I could speak in front of people, and all this, and the team building, and all this life skills things. And we have these techniques from sport, so the children they learn, they get the idea much faster, because we have this problem recently in Palestine, and I guess also in international level, that the non-formal education, it becomes a formal education somehow, because we are repeating ourselves all the time in the matter of how we deliver the things for the kids. So that's why we come up with this idea to try to find out how we can do outdoors activity, and how we can create new methods and material to deliver the things. We have many local partners and also supporters, such as the YWCA. YWCA, it's an international organization, but and they have an office in each organization, a national office in each organization. And recently we cooperate with them in something called Young Citizen Project. And this project is focused on the children in the school, also to tell them about their political rights, and teach them about also somehow. And so we always start with life skills, because it's the base to build any character for any children. But the main topic, it was to increase I lost the word in English, to increase some knowledge, let's say, for them in a political way, how they can have their rights, how they can ask for their rights, how they can fight for their rights in the local level, and also in a bigger level later on. And also we have a partnership with the Palestinian Animal League, which is here is the connection between a new generation and Palestinian animal leagues, because we believe in a new generation. If we don't have the belief of that we should care about the animal in the beginning. So if me as a person or as a kid, if I care about the animal rights and if I care about their needs and don't harm them and all these things, so basically normally it will be easily for me then to be able to talk about human rights, and also I will be more let's say aware about how to fight also for the human rights. And also we have another partnership in locally, which is called Qamat, for documenting the Palestinian struggle, which is another things we work on it in a new generation, and we try to do this cooperation with this organization, because as you know, Palestine, it's been occupied since 1948, and we try to also to keep the history and everything it happened from that time to this time, and to deliver it to the kids, because in the school there is not much focusing on some certain topic. So here also with Kamat, we try to have these things and deliver it for the kids in the school. And here also some picture. This picture, it was a campaign with the Bal Animal Leagues in a city called Tul Karim. It's in Palestine, and it was in 2015. This picture, and in that time we were trying to collect all the dog streets and try to protect them from the people, because people, they were complaining about these dogs, and they were put some things to kill them. I forget the word in English also, but they were put some small things to kill them, or they were shooting them. So we start also, in the beginning, we start a campaign with raising awareness about the animal rights in the city, and then we have a cooperation with the municipality in Tul Karim, and then we collect all the numbers for the dog street, and we put them in the areas that it keep them safe from the people, or from any killing things that it could happen for them. We have many, also we have another things we focusing on we focus on these things, which is environmental awareness, because we believe that we have a very rich nature in Palestine, which is we live in an area, it's a very unique area in the world, let's say, which is Palestine, because we have many different kind of nature. So for example, if I'm in Ramallah right now, which is the degree, it's, let's say it's 10 degrees. If I go just 1 hour from Ramallah to Jericho, it will be like 20 degrees. And if I go from Ramallah to Kermel, to Golan Mountains, which is, it's 2 hours from me, there is snow right there. And if I go 3 hours from Ramallah to Al-Naqab Desert, it's a desert, which is, it's another weather. So we have a different environmental, and we have this unique weathers in each place. So we try also with the new generation and BAL to do hike, like each week, each 2 weeks when we can, to organize hikes. But we make sure that each month we should have a hike in different areas. So we explore the nature, and also we explore the different kinds of animal that we have in the Palestinian nature, and we try to take picture for this animal. And we're planning also to have like a group of people that they just work in collecting this kind of animals, because and protect them, because there is also many hunters, and they go and they hunt these animals. But we have here a problem in this pictures, because this area that we're sitting in right here, it's called an area C, which is in Palestine. We have area P, we have area A, we have area B, we have area C. Area A, which is, it's under Palestinian Authority. Area B and area C, they are under Israeli occupation. So we cannot walk in this area, but sometimes we challenge ourselves and we take the responsibility to hike in our land because we think this is our right to go and explore our land. Okay. Here also some picture from the Young Citizen Project. And as I told you before, here we try to teach the youth that they are from 18 to 30 about the methods and the material that we want them to deliver for the kids. So we start with the youth, and this youth, they are from the whole West Bank. So when say they go to their areas and they deliver the information that we give for them. Training workshop in school. Here it comes like this is after the project. So the youth, they go to the schools and deliver the workshops. And here, as you can see in some area in Palestine, we have this problem, which is we can if you can see the faces of the kids, it's allowed to be on the camera, but in some other places, the faces of the ladies, they can't be in the camera because some problems, let's say, in this community, because they are conservative communities, let's say. And we try to work in this also, and to work in the women rights and in the kids' rights in the same place. طيب. طيب means okay in Arabic. I say طيب many times when I'm speaking sometimes. Here we have, so after we established the organization, which is a New Generation 2016, we say, okay, we want to do some international, we want to have some international experience. So we start connection with the Erasmus Plus. And we have this certification from Erasmus that we can be a partner for many organizations outside Palestine in Europe. So we start doing partnership with the organization in Italy in the beginning, and then in Germany and the Netherlands, Lithuania, Spain, also Greece, and some other countries in Europe. And we were focusing in this international experience and international partnership. We were working in human rights, we were working in gender, we were working in a conference such like the conference that we have today, and also some others. We were work about culture exchange, youth exchange and culture exchange. And since 2016 until now, I think we made more than 100 projects, and we have this like good partner, like very good partnership with these people. And also most of our experience from that time to this time, it comes from these diversity projects, because when we are in the project, we see many people from many countries, and each one had a new materials, had a new thought, had a new idea how to do the same topic that we work in, but in a different way. So we start having this mix between all these cultures and all these people and trainer and volunteers that we meet, and build also our unique material. Also, we have something called EVS or ESC, which is also we send volunteer, which is it's a project under the Erasmus Plus that allowed us to send volunteer to some country in Europe, to the organization, so they can volunteer in this organization for 2 months or 6 months or 1 year, and in this time they can have experience about things that they are interested in. So, for example, me as Anas, if I have interest on video making, so we write a project with our partners. So this volunteer, he will come to your organization and work about video making, and you should provide for him all the tools that he needs to develop his knowledge and his and to increase his experience about these things. And after the 1 year or the 2 months or 6 months, they come back. And until now, we send like more than 20 participants to Europe. They do volunteering there, and they come back. And also when they come back, they deliver all the experience for the youth and for the kids here in Palestine. And in the same way, we host also a volunteer from Europe, from such as Italy, Germany, Also Denmark, also we host volunteers. So also these volunteers, they come to our organization and they work with us on such a topic, and also they explore our culture and all the things it's going around here. Here also some picture from international project. So this is training course in Berlin 2018, Estonia 2019, Lebanon 2019, and each training in different topic and different with different people. So here we comes to the challenge we face. So the challenge we face as a new generation and BAL, it's not different. It's not that different than the challenge that the whole Palestinian people that they face in their life, which is the main thing. It's the Israeli occupation that in Palestine. And I will give you like a very summary view about the occupation and when it starts. So the occupation, it starts in 1948. The occupation for Palestine, it starts from that time when the Zionist movement come to Palestine, and they start they're killing many people around many areas, and also and from that time we start to have a refugee. So we have a refugee inside Palestine, and we have refugees in Lebanon and in Syria, in Jordan, and also in the diaspora in many countries around the world. So this is this is the main. It's not also, as I mean, I cannot call it just a challenge. It's a global problem. I mean, it's a case also for anyone who believes in human rights and dignity for a people. So we try as much as we can to do our projects and our things that we want to do within this occupation things. As I told you, when we do hike in some areas, so it's called an Israeli area in their law, so we can't enter this area. So this is this challenge. We try to face it, to go to walk in that land, and we don't have weapon, we don't have anything. We just walking in our land. This is one thing, and the other things, I mean, based on and also there was another war in Palestine in 1976, which is it was the second wave of refugee for a people when the Zionist movement, they take over also the West Bank, and they start building settlement in all the West Bank. And regarding to the international law, the areas that after 1976, this is an occupied area. And all the Israeli appearance in this area, it's illegal based on the international law. So in this area in West Bank, we have more than 200 settlements. And a small example, me as Anas, I live in Karaoke, which is my village. In my village, I have 3 settlements, 3 Israeli and Zionist settlement, which is they take from my village land more than 70%. And we cannot go to our land and harvest our bake our olive and everything. So this is also another challenge that people, they are living here. And here it comes also a picture for a wall that they start building it in 2006, which is, I think it's the only wall in the whole world now. After maybe the last wall, it was the one that Trump built it between America and Mexico. But I mean, we don't have such a picture like this in the whole world. So this wall, it's divide Palestinian area from Palestinian area. So this, if you can see in the picture here, it's just one village, and they divide the one village in the wall. So the people from the right side of the wall, they cannot go to the left side of the wall. And this also make a problem for the animals, that also it cut the diversity between the animals, because the wall, it's like a circle between the whole 1948 area. So all the animals that they were in the past, they go and they meet, and they go to many area, and they do diversity. Now they cannot go because of the wall that the Israeli built in Palestine. And here it's a picture for Palestine. If you can see the green color, it's the Palestinian area. So in 1946, this is the Palestinian area. In 1947, when the Zionist movement, they come and they start the war in Palestine, they take over all the yellow places. And in the second war in 1976, you can see it becomes smaller. And now you can see all the yellow area that it's occupied from the Israeli, and the green area, it's under the Palestinian Authority, which is not really, but I mean, in the social challenge, we have also here, I mean, about the occupation, if anyone have any question, you are welcoming later on. We can maybe talk about it more, because I mean, it's a tough topic, and maybe some people, they hear about it for the first time, because we have this, when we travel to Europe, some people, they don't hear about the issues that happen in Palestine. So they have many thoughts and many things that they want to talk, they want to ask, and they want to discover more about the situation, which is something we cannot include it in 20 minutes, but I just give a key for people if they want to do a search by yourself, so you can find also many things about the things that happening here. Regarding to the social challenge, we have social challenge, which is also, since we are also, as I told you, we are a diversity country in a nature and also in a people, because we have a Palestinian Muslim, and we have a Palestinian Christian, and we have also a Palestinian Jew that they live also in Palestine and with us. And in these things, it makes also the Palestinian people very unique. But we have some challenge sometimes when we go to some far area, which is villages and the place around the cities. Like until today, we cannot, for example, work with the women's, because we have some problem based on the culture that women's, they have these rules and they have these things, so they cannot do such things as the man can do. And also the formal education in Palestine, it's much important than non-formal education based on the work that I'm gonna have it in the future. So the non-formal education is not recognizable from the government as a certificate. Let's say if I take a training or something, it means nothing for the government when it comes for finding a job. So we trying also to fight in this way to try to have this experience in people's CV and help them also to work in for such positions in the government and around the world. We have also some financial problems, which is, I mean, for us it's challenge. It's not a problem, because sometimes it's very hard to find the people to fund you such an activities and projects, because people also, they are scared that the situation in 1 minute will be changed, and then all the money, we don't know how to continue the projects and everything, because every day we have a new challenges with the occupation, and we don't know what's coming next. So this is also a challenge for the people. And here also from the community challenge, which is this picture, we can't have the face for the ladies in the picture, because they are not allowed to be on the camera in some area. So this is also a cultural problem. We try to solve it from time to time. But in the other hand of the picture, which is the bright picture, that we as Palestinian Muslim and the Christian and Jew, we don't have any religious, for example, any religious discrimination, let's say. So the Muslim, they celebrate Christmas as the the Christian, and the Christian, they celebrate Eid as the Muslims. So people, they are together and they are neighbors and they live together, and there is no problem because they have, I think, and it comes to the reason that all of them, they are united to the main things that they face every day, which is the occupation. So they don't have this. I mean, nobody in the past built on their mind that they have to not to be divided by religious or by culture. And here some challenge have and all here. This is our picture in a first meeting that for the new generation we do it in 2016, and here our success stories, which is also this is our volunteer that they were doing EVS in Europe, and they're doing training course, so they share all the time their experience and what they learn and what they have in Europe. This is Sandra, one of our volunteer. And here is Zakaria, also another volunteer. He was in Berlin. Sandra, she was in Lithuania. This is Mary Shaheen. Also, she was in Italy for 1 year, and she had very nice experience there in gender topic. And when she come back to Palestine, she start working as a trainer based on the experience that she got from Italy with the Joseph Torino organization. And we carry on. And yes, and I would like to really thank you all for listening to me, and I'm very happy to have any question later on. And if I forget something, Sabrina, just tell me.
Nope, you didn't forget anything. That was a very fascinating presentation. I'll just get you to stop your screen share, and then I'll say your name right. Karaoke, is that right?
Yes.
I did it. Okay, good. Sorry.
Not just you, even the people inside Palestine, they don't.
Okay. So that makes me feel a little bit better. Karaoke. Okay. Good. Thanks. Thank you so much, Anas. I think, what's really fascinating to me is that, while you primarily focus on work and engagement with Palestinian youth, I think the issues that you face in some regard are really universal, and particularly when we're talking about developing countries where, or areas when you're working in a lot of rural areas where there's a lot of external challenges and pressures that exist. And I think, things like human rights and its relation to animal rights and environmental rights and gender, equality, health, wellness, these are all issues that are being discussed globally every day. And I think what's really wonderful to see is how you're putting these sometimes very difficult topics into practice, and providing youth groups and citizens the opportunity to explore and dialogue and understand them, and give these youth and these children a voice. So I think it's really fantastic. And I want to again make that connection between the kind of work that you're doing and Caring for Life education, which really centers around this concept again of sentience, and that all living beings, humans, animals, environment, everyone experiences discomfort and struggle when they're not treated with respect and dignity and compassion or equality. And I think the work that you're doing and the value that you place on the interconnectedness of all of these things and all of these elements is really so valuable. And so thank you, I think, from everybody. I'm grateful that we had the chance to learn from you and to learn about how you engage with youth in these challenging circumstances, and how you create opportunities for them to feel empowered and to practice empowerment. And so I think
very quick information that I forget to share, which is some numbers about also some struggle that the Palestinians they have. So since 1976 until today, we have more than 1 million Palestinians. They were entering the Israeli prison for a political reason, and now we have 5,000 Palestinian prisoners and politically in the Israeli prison, and we have 130. They are under the age, like they are under 16, which is they are children. And we have 300 with a disease like very critical disease, 10 with cancer. What else? And we have 550, which is they are in the prison, that they cannot go out of the prison. They have like very high things. We have 300 people, they die inside the prisons. And we have 73 people, they die under the beating and all these things inside the Israeli prison. And yes, this is like just numbers connecting to the human rights and the things that also the Palestinians have since 1948 until today, which is also this prison, it's illegal prison under the international law. So these people, they will defend their lands, their homes and everything. So they are in the prison in illegal way. And also until today, the international law and the international universe, they can do things for these people. So this is just some numbers also I would like to show people, because also it makes them to go share and to go search and look more about the issues here that happening here. And last information, we always say that the Palestinian issues and the Palestinian case, it's a global case. It's not just a Palestinian case, because it's a case for human rights and for dignity and for anyone around the world who believe in dignity and human rights. So it's my case as it's the case for the one who live in North America or in Cuba or in Pakistan or all over the world. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. No, you're correct. And I think it's just, one, I'm sure, of many unfortunate examples of why the work that you do is so valuable and so important, that in order for any society, be it Palestine, Pakistan, or anywhere around the world, to be able to have a strong voice and to have a harmonious future, that we need to be focusing on educating our youth and providing them opportunities to understand what rights are, what equality is, what compassion is, and how to apply that in their everyday life and in their global citizenship. So I think it's really remarkable, the work that you're doing, and thank you for everything that you do and for sharing a small piece of that with us today. And I suspect that you're going to get a lot of questions during the Q&As.
I'm ready.
Good. So just so that everyone remembers, we are getting your questions in the Q&A feature for Anas, and we will attend to those during the Q&A session. But let's move on to our next presenter so that we have time for the Q&A later. So our next presenter will be covering content related to animal welfare, specifically wildlife, and the role that humans play in these issues. And he's really a true expert in these areas. So I think we're in for a very informative experience. But before we begin, we'll do our session 2 icebreaker. So I'd like to ask the MTs, please, to grab your green and red cards once again, as we pose the icebreaker questions about wildlife. Again, if you can hold your cards nice and high so the presenters can see your responses. And for the fellow attendees who are joining us, again, that poll will be launched and you can provide your answers in the poll. So the first question. Have zoos, there we go, there's that poll launched for the attendees. Have zoos evolved through the years? Green for yes, red for no. I like that we have a mix of responses this time. Okay, second question. Has the presence of zoos resulted in meaningful change to the status of wildlife in nature? Green for yes, red for no. Okay. Third question. If zoos did not exist, would animals be better or worse off? Green for better, red for worse. Okay. Fourth question. Are sanctuaries better than zoos? Green for yes, red for no. It's always fascinating to me when I see the hesitation. It's a real thinking questions. And our final question, are zoos good advocates for animals and nature? Green for yes, red for no. Great. So we'll leave that poll up for a moment and maybe we'll get those responses collected. So thank you, everyone. Again, I want to remind everyone that it's worth noting that these topics, people have a lot of varied opinions on these issues, and there's arguments to be made for both sides of what we're going to be discussing today. Very lucky for us. Thank you, Mavish, for sharing those poll results. Really lucky for us is that our speaker, Rob, is so exceptionally well-versed in these topics and the arguments made for both sides for and against wildlife in captivity. So I think we're really fortunate to have an opportunity to learn from someone who's really quite a star in this field. So allow me to introduce our next speaker. Rob Laidlaw is the executive director of the wildlife protection charity ZooCheck based in Canada. He's a chartered biologist, a former Humane Society inspector, and past project manager and technical advisor for World Animal Protection, previously known as the World Society for the Protection of Animals. His work during the past 40 years has involved hundreds of investigations, legislative campaigns, legal actions, capacity building programs, and animal rescues throughout Canada and throughout the world. He specializes in issues associated with the keeping of wildlife in captivity, including in zoos, aquariums, circuses, and the pet trade. Rob is also an award-winning author of 10 children's books about animal welfare and wildlife protection, as well as numerous articles, reports, and book chapters. He has spoken to hundreds of audiences throughout the world and regularly appears in the Canadian media and documentary films. In 2014, he received the prestigious Frederick A. McGrand Lifetime Achievement Award for substantial contributions to animal welfare in Canada. I have personally had the pleasure of working with Rob on wildlife projects, and I can say from experience that literally every conversation I have ever had with Rob is a learning opportunity where I am consistently amazed at the level of information that he knows. And it's a sentiment that I've heard many others express as well. So I'm personally very excited to have this opportunity to gain the insight of his many years of work in this field. I hope you're all as excited as I am. And Rob, I will pass it over to you and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabrina. Just going to do share screen here. At any one point in time, there are literally hundreds of millions of animals that are wild animals that are kept in captivity. And many of us know where some of them are held because we go to zoos, we see them held as exotic pets, but there are all kinds of other wild animals that are held in commercial operations and other types of settings that we may not be so familiar with. A lot of my work over the past 37 to 40 years has involved animals in zoos, and there's about 10 to 12,000 zoos in the world. Nobody really knows how many because nobody's done an accurate count. It's very challenging, but there are 10 to 12,000 zoos, and about 1,200 of them are considered core zoos with professional staff that belong to regional or national zoo associations. And certainly in Pakistan, Pakistan has its own fair share of zoos, some of which have recently generated some level of controversy. Now, when we're talking about things like caring for life and humane education, zoos are important because zoos are utilized all over the world, almost ubiquitously wherever they are found as vehicles for people to promote humane education. And I think that there's a lot of problematic aspects to that. Now, it's really, really interesting to me because in dealing with wildlife in captivity and with zoos in particular, I've had an opportunity over many years to continue learning. And one of the things that I've been able to do is to sort of come to the conclusion that certain things I'm seeing are not quite as they should be, of course. A lot of that deals with animal welfare, but there are other aspects of zoos as well that I think really bear a lot more scrutiny than they've been given, certainly by the general public and by professionals who promote humane education. I remember about 10 years ago doing a tour of zoos around the greater Tokyo area in Japan. And I walked up to the back of this small building in a place, a very small urban zoo called Odagawa Zoo. And I walked into this interior part of this building, and I looked and I saw in the darkness there this lone elephant standing there, and she had been standing along the bars of the interior, and she had her head pressed up against the top of her head pressed up against the wall, and she was motionless, which is very odd for an elephant. And I went up close to her and I took this photo, and you could see the elephant just staring at me. And this is something that I had seen numerous times before, animals looking out from these impoverished environments that they're in into the worlds that are far more complex and enriching that they can never access. But for me, this really struck a chord looking at this elephant, because even though you only see the elephant's eye, I said to myself, that shows an elephant that's really despondent, it's depressed, it may be full of anxiety, it's frustrated, it's lonely. And when I walked around to the other side of that elephant accommodation, I saw the reason why, and it was because this particular elephant had lived for more than 50 years on her own on this slab of concrete in Otagawa Zoo in the greater Tokyo area. And for anybody who's ever even opened a children's book about elephants, you would realize that this is a real problem from an animal welfare perspective and from every other perspective that you can think of. And a lot of the problems in zoos are obvious problems like this. And many of us, certainly those of us who have sensibilities towards animals, who like animals, who love animals, who are interested in animals, we can see these problems. But when you're looking at zoos, it's not just these obvious problems that we have to be aware of. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the less obvious problems that I think as humane educators we should be aware of and be cautious of. Now, one of the huge problems when you're looking at wildlife in captivity, whether it's zoos or exotic pets or commercialized breeding of wildlife for products, is this totem pole of priorities that you see. And certainly in zoos, you see the public put first, the staff put second, and the needs of the animals are generally put third. And wherever we see wildlife in captivity, I think we need to flip that totem pole of priorities on its head. We have to put animals first. We have to put the people who work with the animal second and put the public third. And that doesn't mean necessarily that we might not have utilization or display of wildlife in captivity. It may just be better. It may be more humane. It will be different. But we definitely need to get away from doing what we do now almost ubiquitously throughout the world in putting the public first, the staff second, and the animals third. And we have to put the animals first. Certainly if we're interested in the welfare and the interests, the best interests of animals, that's what we have to do. Now, a lot of the talk about animals deals with their welfare, and we could talk for days and days about animal welfare, but I'm just going to give you a couple of key concepts. Number one, if you look at the academic literature today, you see that when you're talking about animal welfare, generally speaking, you're talking about three basic tenets of animal welfare. You're talking about the biological functioning of the animal. So, you know, does it eat its food? Does its bodily functions work like they should? And a great deal of attention, especially in zoos and the exotic pet trade, is focused on that aspect of the animal, the basic biological functioning of the animal. But there are two other very important and equally, if not more important, parts of animal welfare. And that second part, in addition to the biological functioning, is the affective state. So basically, how do animals feel? And it's not enough that they're not suffering. They should be feeling positive states because that allows them to have a good life. So we have to look at those affective states and the psychological functioning of animals when we're talking about welfare. And that's something that's addressed less when you look at wildlife in captivity. And then the third thing that we have to look at if we're looking at animal welfare is the natural functioning of the animal. So what has it evolved to do? What are its adaptations that allow it to live a particular kind of life? And all animals should be able to live lives according to their evolved and natural adaptations. And when we look at wildlife in captivity, we find that that third tenet of animal welfare is often the one where it's most efficient, because most animals in captivity can do nothing more than sit, stand, or sleep their lives away. Now, I write children's books, as Sabrina mentioned, and I'm a very unlikely person to write children's books. And what I found is that I had to come up with a way of expressing to people, a very simple way, what animal welfare is and how to think about animals when you're looking at them in any captive situation. So I came up with these 4 necessities for all animals, and I think they're scientifically defensible. And when I say the 4 necessities, I'm talking about things that are major contributors to quality of life. So I'm not just talking about those biological functionings, so the things like food, water, and shelter that affect that functioning. I'm talking about quality of life contributors. So the first thing is space. And when you look at wildlife in captivity, especially in zoos, you see that most animals are kept in spaces that are orders of magnitude smaller than they would ever experience in the wild, even in the wild at its most minimal. And just to give you an example, that polar bear that's in this slide in the wild would have a natural home range that would run from about 2,000 square kilometers on the Beaufort Sea in Alaska to about 599,000 square kilometers of home range for a bear that traverses on the pack ice. So an animal that has very large expanse of territory in the wild. In fact, it's the widest ranging terrestrial carnivore on Earth. Well, in captivity, the largest captive setting for a polar bear in captivity is more than 4 million times smaller than the smallest known home range for polar bears in the wild. And that's something that we have to consider when we're looking at animals in captivity, because it's the same for most animals. This is an example that's involving an iconic and charismatic megavertebrate, the polar bear. But for all animals, we have to think that the spaces they inhabit are orders of magnitude smaller. And that's not only for the polar bears and the elephants, that's for the smaller animals too. And many of the smaller animals actually proportionately require greater spaces than even the big animals. And that's something that's overlooked whenever we see wildlife in captivity. This is a turtle that's found here in Ontario that a lot of people look at as being a very sedentary animal. It's a sort of, they see it as sluggish and slow moving and not requiring much space. And so in captivity, they're often in spaces that are only the length of their body. Yet this turtle, every season will travel 10 to 12 kilometers through waterways going to preferred nesting beaches, and will do other things. And in fact, their living spaces cover many hectares of terrain, both aquatic and terrestrial. So many of these smaller animals that we don't give a lot of space to in captivity really should have a lot of space. And there's 3 questions when you look at animals in captivity with regard to space that you should be asking. Number 1, how much space does the animal need to express normal movements and behaviors? Number 2, how much space do animals need to feel safe and secure? And number 3, what are the consequences of not providing enough space? And I think if you stand in front of almost any zoo cage and ask those 3 questions, the answers will show you just how deficient the circumstances are for those animals. And just to give you an idea of what good space would be, or adequate space or better space, this is an exhibit at the Oakland Zoo in California that has very small Latin American frogs. They're about a couple of centimeters long. This entire exhibit is about 10 meters long. And you can see it's got a very varied environment with microclimates, and there's a vertical dimension that's being used. And what they've done here, instead of just putting an animal in a cage, they've designed something that fits that particular animal. They're making the environment fit the animal rather than trying to just fit the animal into any environment that's there. And you can see here, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's a little frog right here. And you can see this is just a tiny portion of that frog's environment. So the actual captive environment is thousands and thousands of times longer than the actual animal itself. And this is something we should be aiming for, whether we're dealing with these tiny little Latin American frogs or whether we're dealing with bigger animals like elephants and bears and big cats. Space is often downplayed as a key welfare consideration, but I think it's one of the most important considerations. Freedom is the second thing. And when I talk to kids, they think, well, are you suggesting we go out and take our dog and let him go in the street and give him freedom? And I say, no. What we want to give animals, and you see this in the academic literature, is some level of autonomy. So we give them an ability to make choice. And that's the way they make a meaningful contribution to the quality of their own lives. And if you go to zoos, you see that animals often don't have much to do. And therefore, it's like a human in a prison. Their choices are diminished and their quality of life is diminished. You know, this wolf on the bank can choose to go forwards, backwards. If she has cubs 10 kilometers away, she can run back and tend her cubs. She makes small choices and big choices. We need to give animals choice. The third thing is family, and not every animal needs a sort of a traditional family, but there are many animals, including animals in Pakistani zoos, and probably the best example recently is Kavan, who was in the Islamabad Zoo, Kavan the elephant. But we have a lot of animals that are not kept in a proper social context, and that's critical for animals to live meaningful, enriched lives in captivity, is to provide them with a social context that allows them to be who they really are. And you can see here, you can see that the bonds between animals like these Japanese snow macaques and the young that's nestled between the two mothers, just how important that social context is for animals. And then the last thing is very easy to understand. It's things to do. You know, so we've got space, we've got freedom, we've got proper social context. And the last thing is things to do, because animals don't wake up in the morning and just sit there. You know, they want to do things just like we do. We don't jump out of bed in the morning and say, we're good for the day, wait where we are, and then jump back into bed when it's time to go to sleep at night. We do things, and so do animals. And if you give them opportunities to do things, they will. And that's another way that they make a meaningful contribution to the quality of their own life. So I tell kids, some as young as 4, that if you remember nothing about animal welfare, none of the technical stuff, just remember space, freedom, social context, and things to do. And then you can look at animals and make a determination as to whether their conditions are appropriate or not. And like I said, I think this is scientifically validated when you look at the academic literature and what's out there. And you know, you'll find that actually does have some veracity. Now, I wanted to show you just a few problems. You've probably seen them before. These are very common problems. I've listed some of them on this slide. Obviously, lack of space I've covered, but also the surfaces animals live on can be problematic. The environmental conditions, if it's boring, like for these lions, there's nothing for them to do. There's no internal furnishings or structural enhancements or other things that allow them to be physically and mentally stimulated. So they get bored, frustrated, full of anxiety, and they end up, just like I said before, sitting, lying, or sleeping their lives away. There's a number of obvious problems, and I'm going to just very quickly show you a few of them. A lot of people would look at the snake and wonder what the problem is with this snake. Well, this is a large constricting snake from South America that is largely aquatic. It does venture up into trees, and you can see here, it's really got very little space. It doesn't really have freedom of choice, because reptiles, fish, amphibians, and smaller animals make choices too. It's very important to them. This snake really has no ability to make any choices. It's sort of stuck in that fake concrete exhibit. It's got no social context, and granted, many reptiles don't have the same type of social context that mammals live in, or birds, but some of them do have social aspects to their lives. And of course, it's got nothing to do. It basically is warehoused until it dies. This is an elephant in Japan, and there are many in Japan like this that, again, has no space, freedom, family, or things to do. That's something that many people would look at, unlike the snake, and think was problematic. There are other cages. This is one in Ontario for a vulture that, you know, looks a little bit better. It's a little bit bigger, but still, when you analyze it in detail, it doesn't provide those 4 things that I mentioned earlier. It basically allows the biological functioning to some degree to be satisfied, but nothing else. You can look at some exhibits that are a bit better, and you can see this is a little bit better outfitted in terms of the branch work in that, although that's very hard and static and not moving. It's not a flexible environment with this black and white colobus monkey. You can see that it looks a little better because there's this mural painted on the wall at the back. So it's a little better than the ones we saw, but still is grossly deficient in most respects and doesn't look at what the animal's actual needs are. And then as you move into bigger, more well-funded zoos, especially in Europe and North America, you see larger exhibits. Many of them look like movie sets more than real environments because gorillas don't live on this fake kind of concrete type of environment. They live in the rainforest. And you see these kinds of deficient exhibits, some of them costing millions or tens of millions of dollars being constructed. There are many being constructed right now. And some of the better exhibits, that look a bit more naturalistic, they're still not providing those four things, particularly space, because when you think about it, an animal like a gorilla, this is the gorilla exhibit at the Dallas Zoo in the United States, people will walk by and say it looks a bit better, but it's really not. Gorillas have very large home ranges. They're moving all the time. They eat up to three to 400 kinds of plants in the wild. They have very complex, flexible environments. It's very intense and complicated social environment that they live in, and you just can't replicate that in captivity. So you've got something that looks a bit more naturalistic, but it's actually quite small and doesn't satisfy those four basic quality of life necessities. And then if you look at some of these better exhibits, you find many interesting things, like a lot of the naturalness of it is actually fake. And you can see here, there's a mural painted on the wall back there to make it look better for visitors. The animals don't really care. And then you see at the front there, those vertical metal posts with electrified wires on top that protect the vegetation from the animals. So the animals actually live in a very Spartan kind of environment. They would love to get to that vegetation and manipulate it and chew it and do things and have fun, but they're not allowed to. And you can see here something that visitors don't notice as well is these vines here are all electrified vines. So a lot of times what you're looking at, even with the better zoo environments, are environments that are really quite impoverished from the animal's perspective and really just there to make things look better to the visitor. And that's been sort of a thread through a lot of zoo design over the last number of years. And there's a very alarming group of trends in that many zoos, and this has actually been proposed in Pakistan as well, many zoos have become highly commercialized, focused on the visitor experience, wanting to give visitors more amenities. And certainly in North American and European zoos, things like light shows and fireworks displays and amusement park rides. This whole trend towards commercialization in zoos is very bad for any institution or any business that claims to be concerned about humane education and about conservation of wildlife. And I think that the modern zoo trends are very, very alarming. Now, two of the things that everybody's heard, every humane educator's heard this about zoos, is that they educate people and they conserve animals. And I think if you look in detail at those claims, you find out that there is a grain of truth, but it's only a grain, that generally speaking, the claims that they make with regard to conservation and education don't stand up to scrutiny. They are not as zoos claim. And in fact, I would say, after all these years of examining these issues, that zoos are counter-educational. But when you're looking at education, you want to look at a few metrics. You want to look at the accuracy of information and how it's conveyed to zoo visitors. You want to look at the educational outcomes that occur. And most importantly for zoos, because they claim to be wanting to create conservationists and change the world, the wild world for animals, what are the tangible outcomes in terms of behavior change that benefit the environment and that benefit animals? And when you look at the academic literature, you find that there are really none. So when humane educators make an assumption that zoos are educational and that they should be one of their methods of educating kids, I think they really should step back and reevaluate and look at the literature that's there. The other big claim from zoos, almost every zoo in the world says this, including the worst, is they conserve animals. And usually what they mean is they're breeding animals in captivity. But when you look at that practice, you find out that, number one, most of the animals bred in zoos are common. Most of the animals that are bred that are endangered species are in programs that have no mechanism or often even no intention of ever putting animals back into the wild. So they're basically breeding animals to stay in cages in captivity. And you find that when you breed animals, that it's really a bit of an exercise in futility, except in only the most rare and exceptional cases, because most of the breeding is not a good or not considered a good frontline conservation strategy for wildlife preservation. Because what zoos do is they tend to look at very long timelines with the hope that at some point in the distant future, they'll be able to release animals back into the wild from this population that's in captivity. But when you look at real conservation and real captive breeding for conservation, you find that animals that are bred in captivity must be put back into the wild as fast as they possibly can, because they may change with each successive generation that they're in captivity. And if you're talking about 100 years down the road, putting them back, then the animals you end up with might be very different from the ones that you started with, and the environments that they lived in the wild may not exist anymore. So what's the point? The other thing I want to mention, and we could talk about conservation for a long time, is that very few zoos actually do any conservation. The 220 members of the American Zoo and Aquarium Association, which are some of the best zoos in the world, on average, they spend less than 1% of their annual operating budget on what generally is considered to be conservation. So if you've got a very large budget and you're only putting 1% in, I think it's really incredulous that anybody would call themselves an institution of conservation. If my charity said, you know, we're an animal protection charity and we're only putting 1% into our animal protection work, people would think we were crazy and they wouldn't support us, but that's exactly what zoos do. So I think when you look at those claims, they don't stand up to scrutiny. And it does relate back to that totem pole of priorities, with public first, staff second, and animals third. And again, we have to tilt that on its head. Now, where can we go in the future with captivity? What should we be promoting? Well, there's a lot of good ideas out there, and I'm going to show you a few, but we have to see animal welfare as a guiding principle. It is not in the zoo world right now. We would probably be looking at a massive reduction in the number of zoos. There's far too many, and a lot of them are very poor. A focus on smaller animals that can be kept better, you know, given more space, more complex environments. There's a number of different things that have been proposed, not only by myself, but by many other people, many of them far more learned than I am, on where we should be going in the future. But I thought one of the best ways of showing where we might go is to actually show you some of the better environments that are out there that we should be looking at when we're talking about captivity. One of them is in Singapore at the Jurong Bird Park. This is a very large public facility, and it's not perfect, but it does have some examples of some wonderful exhibits. And this is one of the best aviaries I've ever seen. It's called the Waterfall Aviary. And when you walk through it, you can see it's a very complex rainforest environment. And it's got these nature pathways, and you would think you were in a public park somewhere in Asia. And in fact, you're actually in this aviary, and you follow these paths and walk across the bridges, and you come to a 100-foot waterfall, and you can look up and see flocks of parrots flying across in the sky and all that. And this is actually an enclosed aviary. And it really shows you that if you're going to keep animals, this gives them that space, freedom, social context, and things to do. It's a very complex, very interesting environment for birds. And I would expect that many of them probably have no idea that they're confined at all. This is another aviary called the Lorry Loft, also at the Jurong Bird Park. And you can see the people up on the bridges. They're at the canopy of the forest, but that forest goes all the way down to the ground. So you've got these tiered levels of forest providing different habitats, different microclimates. all kinds of things for those birds to do, and they're very small birds. And again, this is the kind of thing that we should be looking at to say, if we're going to keep animals, how should we keep them? Well, this is one example possibly that we can learn from. In the United States, there's a very small zoo, very famous zoo called the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. It's situated in the American desert, and they only have desert animals. So those animals that are in captivity are in a climate and in a terrain that they've evolved to live in. And you can see this looks like just part of the desert. This is actually the zoo. It is beautifully integrated into the landscape of the area. And you can see here, this is a peccary, which is a wild pig that lives in Latin America and the United States. And the environment it's living in is the environment it's evolved to live in. And this is something, this is an idea that we should be looking at when we're talking about wildlife in captivity and doing it right. And this is just another picture of that peccary in this environment that it's evolved to live in. A friend of mine provides another example. He's a guy that had never actually visited a zoo, but he was very interested in bears. He actually used to hunt and kill them for sport, and changed his mind and became a bear advocate and built a bear sanctuary. And I think this is a person who had no formal expertise, but he looked at what the animal was, how it lived in the wild, and said, what can I do to give that animal an environment that's good for that animal? And what he did was he constructed this very large, very complicated, complex, flexible environment that currently houses 4 American black bears. And this exhibit was built for about 120,000 US dollars. He already had the land, but he built the exhibit for about 120,000. A similar kind of exhibit, if it were built in a zoo, would probably cost tens of millions, and he did it very cheaply. And you can see the complexity of the environment. You can see the pond, the logs, the vegetation on the ground. And this is also serving as an educational facility because he brings people in, and he has all kinds of graphics and interpretation going on, and nobody's allowed to go without being guided. So it's very, very controlled. It's a very different kind of experience than you would see where somebody walks through a zoo running from one cage to another, seeing what animals are active and what animals are not. And this is in a facility that you leave and you are very, very educated about. And he's got interesting things that he thought up on his own. He had a road going through the property, so he thought, I want to use the rest of the property for the bears. So he built a bear bridge, and the bears go up and across this bear bridge here to the other side of the road. He's done lots of innovative things. And I think when you look at these facilities that are not regular zoos, you see a lot of these fantastic ideas. And this idea of the bear bridge has actually been incorporated into local zoos in the Wisconsin area. And you can see here the complexity of environment. And there's no electrified wires preventing the bears from climbing the trees. You know, they go up 20 meters into these trees, and they make mast piles and nests, and they forage on the ground. And he said university students come in and study the bears, and they don't do all the weird abnormal behaviors that bears in zoos do. So we can look at this kind of environment and say, if we're going to keep these animals, maybe this is how we should do it. And I just show this photo because this is an innovative electric fence that my friend Jeff Traska designed as well, without knowing anything about what other zoos had done. And this is a movable fence that allows the contours of this part of this particular enclosure to be changed very easily. And these are a couple of bears just walking down this log. So very interesting environment. And it stands in stark contrast to, what we see in zoos. And I'm showing this slide because this is one of the elephants that we rescued out of the Toronto Zoo. Very bleak environment, less than an acre in size. And we moved those elephants 4,200 kilometers down to California to live in a 2,300 acre sanctuary where they had room to roam, hills to climb. They could pull down trees, swim in lakes, and have free association with other elephants, so they could actually move from that horrible environment here in Toronto, where I live, to a much better environment that allows them to do what they're supposed to do, to have those four things: space, freedom, family, and things to do. And this is one of the elephants that came from Toronto that now enjoys all of those, an ability to do all of those things. And one of the most important is just to get away. If they want to get away from each other or from anybody who's watching them, they can get away. And the last thing I want to talk about, because it's an exciting trend, is the world of virtual zoos. This is a mock-up of Orbi Zoo that existed in Yokohama, Japan, and there was one in Dubai where you go in and there are no live animals, but there are all kinds of virtual wildlife experiences. I think this is a very interesting set of ideas, and one that we'll see more and more in the world. There's been many of these types of things already put in place, some temporary, some not, but I think there's a great room for promise and development. And you can see that like in this theater where the entire theater tilts and they have special effects and different levels of humidity because of mist and sound and all that. It's a very engaging and interactive experience. There's an interesting projection technology that's come out of Japan called Light Animal, and it's often referred to as indoor whale watching, where you have these large images, and they're not just pictures. They actually are interactive with the people who are in front of them. And they actually do this with dinosaurs in a facility in Australia as well. So very, very interesting and exciting ideas utilizing technology. And there's another light animal where the orca is coming and interacting with these kids. You've got others that have been done by National Geographic that are basically the same kind of thing: indoor whale watching, seal watching. I think this is a wonderful technology that could supplant the idea of animals in tanks and aquariums, which actually look like they're on screens anyhow. So some very interesting things. We actually came up with one of our own. When we were moving the elephants, we came up with this idea through ourselves in the architectural firm for something called the Elephant Labyrinth, which was a scalable, non-live elephant experience. So there's lots of ideas out there. This was one mock-up of a sensorium where people would stand on that platform right next to this large circular screen with live elephants that are in the wild, and the sensorium would allow them to feel the infrasound vibrations made by elephants, and there would be smells pumped into the room and all that. So very much apt for its name, the sensorium, because it was a sensory experience that would introduce people to the world of elephants in a way that you can't when you're just looking at them standing in a zoo cage. And then the final one I wanted to mention is sort of a hybrid facility called the Wild Center. And this is one that's in the Northeast US. And it's a combination science center, geological center, museum, nature center, and zoo. The animals are only native to that region. And everything is about interpreting the region and its environment to the people who come. So there's no lions and tigers and aardvarks. It's all about the region. And when you leave that facility, you have a greatly enhanced knowledge of the environment, the issues, and everything else. And it's a fantastic place. It's super interesting, very engaging. Kids love it, adults love it. The level of learning far exceeds that you would ever see in a zoo. And there are some very exciting things going on with facilities like this. This is one of their most recent additions to the Wild Center, and this is an elevated platform that goes through the actual forest in the area and provides an ability to interpret in a real life sense the environment, the trees, the plants, the animals, the climate, and everything else. And to me, when I look at these, I say, let's sort of put aside the traditional zoo, the one that started, at least the traditional modern zoo that started in Vienna in 1752. Let's sort of put that aside and start looking at these other facilities, because they really point the way for us to move into the future if we really want to educate, if we really want to conserve, if we really want to be humane. And also if we really want to have interesting ethical attractions for the public as well, because many of them are closed to the public, many of them are open, but they are viable in terms of serving that cultural and entertainment function as well. So I think there's a lot of room for optimism. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of excitement, but we need more people not just accepting at face value that the traditional zoo down the street that incarcerates animals in these less than optimal conditions is the way to go. We need people to question that and to promote these other ideas, to think outside the box. And I think if we do that, the world will be a much better place for both animals and for us. So I'm going to stop there and say just thank you very much for listening, and I hope I wasn't too long.
It's fascinating, honestly. I'm glad that I was proven right by the fact that there's an endless amount of information that comes from you, Rob, and it's always. I think I've heard you talk on these things so many times, but every time I hear you, I learn something new and I hear something new, so it's really fascinating. I think what's really interesting to know is that while we were just talking about wildlife and wildlife in captivity with regards to zoos today, wildlife and wildlife issues encompass so many different things. Wildlife trafficking, exotic animals as pets, conservation and education, which you touched on, endangered and at-risk species. So I think that a lot of times these kind of issues are not always on our radar because it's not something that's directly a part of our lives, like issues with domestic animals, for example, farm animals and pets and so on. So I think it can often feel quite daunting to the average person that our choices and how we engage in these issues really has no impact or no relevance in the lives of wild animals. And I think what I hope you'll be able to address a little bit in the Q&A is how the impact of our choices actually can have an impact, small or large, on wildlife and their well-being, and how advocacy for wildlife is actually rooted in what we promote in CFL, which is the recognition of sentience and giving value to every living being's well-being and their life and their quality of life. And that advocacy is rooted in just knowledge of these issues and learning about these issues. So thanks, Rob, for the opportunity for sharing that message, and hopefully during the Q&A you'll be able to address some of those other details as well.
Absolutely.
So thanks. And before we move on to the Q&A, I'd like to briefly welcome the Managing Director of the Sindh Education Foundation, Mr. Abdul Kabir Kazi, to the panel so that he can say a few words on behalf of SEF. So welcome, Mr. Kazi.
So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And let me, on the very outset, thank Mr. Rob and Mr. Anas for such fantastic presentations. Both were different in the nature, but both were very relevant to the subject. And particularly Mr. Anas, we can understand the challenging circumstances under which you are undertaking this initiative. This is absolutely marvelous. And we would certainly love to have you in Pakistan once we start the CFL practically. I'm sorry for not attending the earlier two sessions of this webinar, series of webinar, but this is the third one and I'm pleased to be here. In October 2019, thanks to Ms. Shapara and Ms. Sabrina and Ms. Joy, that we concluded this agreement MOU for initiating the Care for Life project in Pakistan. We were very pleased to start it in academic year 2020. And this started very fantastically when Ms. Dawn visited us in October 2018 for some preliminary understanding, and then Mr. Bill and Karenza were here for master trainers training in February. But immediately after they left in March, the world went under the lockdown. And so we decided to initiate the project, the CFL in Pakistan, not in year 2020, but in year 2021. After a few months, total outage on every side. Thanks again to Ms. Sabrina, who got us all around online on Zoom and Teams. And we then agreed to start some kind of activity. And thank you very much for putting this series of webinar, organizing this series of webinar, and which has actually given a lot of opportunity to people at Sindh Education Foundation to have the knowledge, not only about the Care for Life, the syllabus that you have already shared with us, but about the things that are going on around the world, particularly the sustainable goals and the Care for Life, every living thing on earth, and the environmental changes and the importance of environment, how it works and how it should be. Thank you very much to all those speakers who were there on the first two sessions. They also delivered what was very useful for people in ACF, whether in Karachi or Larkana or Hyderabad, in Sakhar and Mirpur Khas. All the regions, everyone here is actually very excited about this project. But as we understand, because of this COVID, the things are not as usual and as normal as these should be. The new normal is now the word, and we all have to follow it. We are looking at starting the project now when the next academic year starts, inshallah, from the 1st of August 2021. In between, we have around 6 months. So I'm sure we are not going to just lay off, but we will be trying to undertake some of the activities, preparation of syllabus, translation, other things that will be going on. And in between, I'm sure Ms. Sabrina will also keep us awake through online meetings. So thank you very much, all of you. Once again, I'm sure this is going to be a very, very beneficial activity for the people in ACF, particularly our master trainers and the people who are going to deal with the project. Thank you very much. Hoping to see you again, and hoping to see so many other activities actually being undertaken before the project initiates and after the project initiates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kazi. I think it goes without saying that this project really wouldn't be the success that it is without the phenomenal team at SCF and their capacity to be able to take this program forward on the ground. So I think you know, we're equally fortunate to be working with SCF, and I think all of us are fortunate that we're have this opportunity to connect with speakers like Anas and Rob and get this additional information that serves to strengthen our own foundation in the program when we share it with the educators on the ground. So that's a real, I think all in all, we're all very fortunate and very lucky to be working with one another and to be learning from one another. And so thank you, Mr. Kazi and Rob and Anas and our trainers. And so let's, in the interest of time, let's move on to our Q&A, because we've seen quite a few questions pouring in for both of our speakers. So hopefully we'll have a chance to get to as many as possible. Anas, I'll start with one question from you, for you. One question is that, and I'm going to summarize here, is can you define as some examples of youth bringing about positive change in communities?
Again, the question, please.
Yes, bringing about change and making it happen is a process. So can you give some examples of how youth in communities that you've worked with have implemented positive change?
Yeah, for example, in such an area like a Jalazon camp, which is a refugee camp inside near Ramallah, we start work with youth there in 2012, which is they don't know anything about the youth work and how to help community, how to help one another. And today, this group of people that we start with them in 2014, they are a trainer and they are giving, and they have like an office in the camp. They're doing many stuff for the kids inside the camp. And you can take this story for many other stories that we work with them around Palestine.
Okay.
I can't be short in my answer.
That's okay. Short is also good, because then we have more time to ask you more questions.
Because I see many questions, so just...
No, it's okay, it's okay. Okay, so then we'll switch over to a question for Rob. Let's see here. Here's a really good one. What could be a possible alternative to zoos in terms of having a wildlife experience or education for children?
That's a very good question, and it's one that comes up all the time. One of the first things I would say is that because I don't think zoos work in an educative way, we don't really need an alternative to zoos. But we may need an ability to educate people about wildlife. And I think that there are all kinds of models out there right now that can be used. There are all kinds of sanctuaries, some of them that allow controlled visitation by the public, some of them that don't, that use remote means like Zoom and things like that, that engage literally tens of thousands of people, far more than they could ever accommodate if they allowed visitation. So there are places like that. There are specialist conservation breeding centers that allow members of the public in. Again, not in an unfettered way like you would see in a public zoo where you pay an admission and walk around, but where you go in and you go through this whole interpretive experience that's very involved. And when you leave, you actually have a lot more in your brain than just a few facts that you picked up from reading a sign or that some docent said. There are facilities like the Wild Center that are hybridized facilities that are part science center, part museum, part botanical garden, that also have animals. There are quite a number of examples like that really serve as a model for where we should be going in the future. I've actually been involved in a number of these kinds of things. So virtual zoos, large centers for single species that are very different models of captivity that provide a qualitatively better experience for members of the public, whether it's directly or remotely. So I think there's lots out there that are not sort of your traditional menagerie zoo that you can look at and say, wow, we should be doing that, or we should be learning from that, or we should be getting direction from that. So I think that there's tremendous opportunities out there to locate models and to learn from them and use them. And I would say that's what we need, not traditional zoos.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so we have a question for Anas here. It's been great listening to you. Anas, it seems that it has not been easy to implement the programs that you've done. My question is, or the question here is can you highlight how much support you've received from the UN missions or any other international bodies which support NFE type projects on both sides? And do you or your organization get a chance to go to the other side of the wall for peace-related youth activities?
Actually, an organization level, we have none because we don't search for, until now we're a small organization. Let's say that the main things that the best things that we have, it's the human resources. And we believe since we have the human resources, then we can make the local change that we're looking for. But for sure, we cooperate with other people that they work with UN organizations such as UNICEF, YWCA, and this organization. And we try to cooperate with this organization that they have main support from UN organizations. But the main support that we're looking for all the time, that the support that comes from people, that they see our works and how we implement our work, and they join us to do to help us to do more activity in other places. And most of the time when it comes for money support, let's say, the people themselves, they fund some projects or some activity in some area. So here I go back to the main resource, which is the human resource that we have inside Palestine, and recently also we have it around Europe, basically with many supporters from many organizations and many backgrounds as well. And all these people also, they try to help us all the time with more information, more ideas, and sometimes with some projects also cooperating projects. Yes.
Thank you. Rob, a question for you. What do you feel are the best ways to improve the situation with zoos, especially in less well-funded communities? For example, dialogue and partnership or lobbying and regulation? And how can we involve students in these efforts?
That's a very good question, and there is no magic bullet answer. It's a question that the answer is derived from local circumstances. Sometimes it may be a matter of speaking out in public and making a lot of noise, and that will create a reaction and from the zoo, and the zoo will change. Sometimes it's engaging on a political level. Sometimes it's other things. What I will say is that it begins by people doing some critical thinking when they visit a facility, and then learning about how that facility operates and who makes decisions with regard to it. And once you understand how those decisions are made and who's directing that facility, you will have a better idea as to where to go in terms of changing things. But what I really want to stress is that anybody can do this kind of thing. Anybody can start the process of making change. And in writing children's books, I had a very interesting experience where one of my publishers wanted me to start to profile children that were carrying out wildlife campaigns. And it was a remarkable experience because I found kids as young as 5 that had organized into groups that were doing political campaigns. There was one here in Ontario to save turtles that were being crushed on roads by cars in the springtime when the mothers were traveling across the roads to lay their eggs in another part of their range. And these kids did all of the lobbying, they did the research, they contacted the media, and they ended up getting turtle crossing signs put up all throughout the region. And these kids were 5, 6, 7 years old. They were extremely young. You would never expect it. I've met 12-year-olds that were running statewide initiatives in the United States to fight puppy mills and to fight other animal abuse problems, and they actually have won. I've met kids doing their own research projects under the auspices of US Fish and Wildlife and other agencies on bats and other creatures in the wild. I think the most important thing for people to remember is that for change to happen, the process of making it happen can start with anybody. You can be 80 or you can be 5 years old if you're so inclined. But you have to start. Just start doing something. Start talking, start dialoguing, start researching, and start that process going. And if you do, change will happen. And I would say, just to finish, the hardest thing for a lot of this is like writing a book. They always say the hardest thing is starting it. It's not writing it, it's starting it. Well, it's the same for all of these things that people sort of lump together as activism. The hardest thing is really just starting. But once you start, you can see where you're going. You can, if you do it right, you can find the path ahead. So just start. It doesn't matter who you are. Anybody can do it regardless of your circumstances.
I like the fact that I can see both Rob and Anas nodding their heads when you say that, just start, that anyone can do it, just start. I mean, it's clearly been the experience of both of you that you can take a very small initiative of one person, and in this case, each of you, and turn it into something quite substantial, whether it's a new generation organization or a zoo check, and create some really significant change for youth or animals or the environment in the world. So I think we're lucky to at least have 2 people sitting here who, when they say just start and change will come, that you're really practicing what you're preaching and accomplishing what you're advising on, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and can I just add one other thing, and that's that, and I'm sure Anas would agree, we're not special. We don't have, we're not rich. We're not, at least I'm going to speak for myself. I don't know, but I'm not an intellectual giant. I'm just a guy that saw a problem. And it's really funny because a lot of people think people that run organizations or do things are special. They're not. And in fact, I have this colleague of mine here in Canada. When he was 13 years old, he started a campaign to save the Great Bear Rainforest, this huge, beautiful area in Western Canada. And he was successful. And recently he was doing an interview. This is, he started the project like 15 years ago, and he's still doing it. But recently he did an interview and the interviewer was saying, oh, you're so special, so accomplished and all of this. And he goes, you know what? I really appreciate you saying that. But the most remarkable thing about me is how unremarkable I am. Anybody can do this. And I think people have to remember that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, I think that is a fantastic segue to the next question for Anas, actually, which is taking it to the other side. One question is, what factors may stop youth from participating effectively in their development?
Again, the first word, what was it?
What kind of things might prevent young children or youth from being effective and participating in their development?
I mean, the main things as we were speaking, it's how the occupation it's affect the people's life every day. So I mean, in West Bank we have more than 10 checkpoints. So if I want to go from Ramallah to Nablus to have a workshop, and there is a checkpoint, and if this checkpoint they will not allow me to enter Nablus, so in that day my work is cut. I cannot do the develop. And sometimes they close areas and they close villages and they do many kind of this closing stuff and this military stuff. So this is the main things that the Palestinian youth and kids and women and every person in Palestine that he face every day, and this affects their health life, their psychologist life, everything that they want to develop. And in the other side of affection of these things, that because people they cannot go out of their villages sometime or out of their cities sometimes, so it's cut them from the diversity that they can see in others in the other cities. For example, and when it comes to talk about Ramallah, we talk about they call it the Western Berlin of Middle East, because we have everything in Ramallah. But when you go to Hebron, for example, it's totally different culture, different category of people. But why the people from Hebron and Ramallah, they cannot be mixed all the time? Because the checkpoint that divide them to come through the cities, and also the wall that they built in 2016, which also it's divide many areas of Palestine. And here what we try to do, we try to all the time we try to do a mixing workshop between people from Gaza Strip, from Haifa, from Jaffa, from Akka, from Hebron, from Ramallah. So to mix all these people, because each one of them have a very fabulous and different background and thoughts and stuff. So yeah, I think this is the main challenge, which is there is other challenges in culture and in people mindset sometimes, but it's not that difficult to handle because we have our ways and our keys to enter each community and each place. We have people like they can kind of help us to let the people listen what we want to say.
Can I add an extension to that question as well, which is, and there was another question here about that also. Gender is one thing that you touched on in your presentation as being a social challenge, and you did talk a little bit about how you experience the challenge of working with girls and women, for example. Can you also extend a little bit and mention how you overcame some of those challenges?
Yeah. When we talk about gender, since also we have many concerns places, and even we are diversity country, which is we have the Christian and Jew and the Muslim in the same places. In some areas, the women they are not allowed to go out for workshops or doing some kind of stuff. But recently, with many works and many things that we're doing recently, we succeed to enter some communities and learn and teach the women about life skills and about how they can express themselves very probably. And the most recently things, the 400 women that we train them now in Hebron about life topics, let's say. So this is one challenge, and the other challenge with gender also when it comes to villages, when we want to work with girls, there's some people they also they don't allow us to talk to them because maybe they want, in their mind they think that we gonna to change their mind how they think about religious or stuff or such as like that. So we go through the schools and we try to also to talk to them. And sometimes also, which is the main things that I believe that we have all of us to do it in the concerns of Pakistan or in any place around the world, to talk to the families, I mean to the parents, to have a gathering for parents for this village or for this city or for this camp or whatever, and try to have a conversation with these parents, not a harshful conversation. We start with them from step by step. So also we try to make a change in the parents' mind, so it's very easily then to work and to have the main change in the kids.
It's really a good example of community engagement and not having to only engage the youth, but the entire community around them. You muted yourself, Anas. There you go.
I mute myself because we have some new cat that entered the organization.
It's a good audience. We're talking about animal welfare, so it's good. Well, now maybe your cat in the background is going to give us the segue to the next question, which is a little bit about animal rights. So I'd actually like to present this question to both of you because I think it's a question that comes up quite a lot, and particularly when we're meeting with developing countries, for example, and that's an issue about animal rights and why should animals have rights and why should we care about animal rights and what's the value in that? So maybe Rob, I'll pose that question to you first, and I'll read a question from one of our attendees here and expand on it. Do animals have rights? Who designs those rights, and are they implemented through the world? And perhaps I'll add an addition to that question as well, which is why should we care about animal rights when there is so much human suffering in the world? Why is it important? So maybe I'll start with you, Rob, and then Anas, you can also answer that.
That's a really good question. It's one that comes up all the time. Why should we care? I don't know if there's sort of a single answer. Everybody's different as to why they do care. I think that if we're intelligent, compassionate people, if we believe in science, and if we don't want to be the promulgators of abuse and suffering, then we should be giving animals greater consideration, and part of that would be giving them some kinds of rights in law. Here in Canada, you know, the lack of rights for animals has been identified as one of the key problems in helping animals in every sector. Here in Canada, like in most parts of the world, animals are basically considered property under the law. And there's lots of people, for a variety of reasons, that think that's no longer acceptable. Certainly for me, I think that if nothing else, we should look at the science and realize today that the science tells us that animals, even going down to amphibians and fish, share the vast majority of cognitive, emotional, and social capabilities as we do. They have lives, they have interests, they suffer. And if we recognize the similarities between us and them, to me, if we're reasonable, we should be thinking, well, maybe they deserve some of the considerations that we afford ourselves and others. And I think that's happening. And I think a lot of it's driven by science, but certainly there's this changing ethic as well in people right across the world, partially due to the internet being exposed to all of these shows about animals and, you know, information that wasn't as accessible in the past about animals. But for me, let's look at the science. Let's recognize that these animals are very similar in many respects to us, and therefore deserve an increased level of consideration. Whether that's, you know, rights like humans have, I doubt that will happen, but certainly they need some kinds of rights. And there's been all kinds of different rights proposed. And it's up to us as humans to give them those rights, because they may have, some people say, an inherent right to live, an inherent right not to suffer, and all that. But really, when it comes down to it, we bestow rights, we identify and define them, and all of that. So it's up to us to do the right thing. But I think let's be driven by the science, and by changing sensibilities about animals because of information, and let's do the right thing and change their status in the law everywhere.
Can I pose the same question to you, Anas? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, he said many things that I wanted to share, which is that's why I said we'll say ask very common question that people ask every day, and I think it's a global question also everywhere, like why we should care about and why what. But here it comes back to the connection between the animal rights and the animal rights and the human rights. If I'm a person that care about the dogs in the street, that care about the cats, that care about any animals around me or around the world, then it's basically have this idea how to care about the human rights. But it comes also, I'm trying to give this argument sometimes to the people. I mean, put yourself in this dog shoes, in this horse shoes, in this elephant shoes, in this cat shoes, and try to feel how they feel when you harm them, when you hit the dog in the street, when you do stuff like that. And when it comes also to the human rights, I mean, sometimes I don't have a category for human rights. I mean, I don't believe that there's a people they put for us what is the human rights it means, because also for me it's a complex topic, because the people who put the human rights for me, they are the ones, sometimes they're the ones who attack the human rights, and they tell us this is the human rights. I mean, it should based on I do whatever I want, but then I mean, once I don't harm anyone, I can do whatever I want as a human being, and it goes also to the animals. And also I go back to the connection that always the argument that I'm telling to the people. You should put yourself in a shoes for this horse that you harm, for this donkey that you make him suffer every day going, and I don't know how many rounds, for this sheep that you killing and you cut their throats in many different occasions for no reason. You are not hungry, you just kill this sheep because you want to celebrate something. I mean, this is not a step in mind of thinking. So we have this argument all the time with people, and I think we need much time also to reach a point that to make people really to live with the animals as the animals a main part of our life, because animals and the trees and all the nature, they are them. So we need very not long time, but we need to work hard about to raise the awareness about how to live or how to enjoy your life with the animals around you. And also we need to destroy some stereotype about dogs, about the wild animals, about very kind of animals that they tell us it's dangerous, and when you see it you have to kill it right away because it will harm you. And all these things, it's a stereotype and it's not true, and they put it in the kid's mind since the day that the kid is born to this life. So we have kids, they grow up with this stereotype idea about some kind of animal. So you see people, they are kind for animal and they are not kind for other type of animal, and this is and discrimination also when it comes to connected to the human rights. When I'm kind for you and I'm not kind for that person because his nationality, because your nationality is this and this nationality is this. So also it's the same happening with animals. So I'm kind for a white cat, but I'm not kind for a black cat because my grandma tell me the black cat it's very bad luck and all these things. It's very it's very complex.
No, I think what's fascinating about what both of you have shared is that we're talking about it now on a very human level, about having compassion for animals, for nature, and what kind of relationship we have with them. But I think it's also valuable that we consider them, you know, a more global element of it as well, and that there are even studies that show that negative attitudes towards nature and towards animals do actually suggest that in the future, children will also exhibit those negative behaviors towards each other and in their communities. So I think that it's a very interesting and complex issue, as you said, as both of you have said, and one that I think warrants further exploration. I wish we had more time to do that today. Unfortunately, we don't.
I want to just add one thing, which is its conclusion for this question, which is to let people, to send people to the nature, to try to make a connection between the human being and the nature itself, with the trees, with the rocks, with everything in the nature. Because people right now in all over the world, they are very far from nature. They are living in the cities, in a huge building, blah, blah. So that's why also they have this gap between them and between the nature, which is nature have the animals and trees and everything. Once I have this connection between me and the nature, things that work.
I think it's a good point, because, you know, it's easy for us to mention only animal rights or human rights, and we must include environmental rights in this conversation as well. Thankfully, I'm not sure if you had the chance to join us in our last session, but we had Michael Kaufman from Green Chimneys join us for the last webinar, and he talked a lot as well about the importance of nature in education and the kind of impact it can have on well-being and our development, which was a really fascinating bit of information. And I think it's worth mentioning that has to be encompassed in this kind of dialogue, that we're not just talking about human rights with the example of people in Palestine, or animal rights with the example of wildlife in captivity in zoos, but environmental rights and how we're treating our planet and how we're engaging in our planet and how all of those things connect together. So I think it's kind of fascinating that we've had, you know, people from such different backgrounds come together today and talk about very different issues and still find the opportunity to see where those crossovers happen and where they intersect, and how we're really talking about the same message at the end of the day, no matter whether we're talking about zoos or we're talking about occupation and youth empowerment in challenging circumstances. That really what we're talking about is showing compassion, having awareness about what other living beings go through and what kind of experience they have. So I think it's an interesting message. It's a wonderful thing to take away, and I think it's a really a perfect point at which we can maybe close our webinar and say that that's hopefully a key takeaway and a key message that we can get from all of this today. I'm very sorry that we weren't able to get to everyone's questions. We do have a lot of questions that did come up that we didn't have time to get to, unfortunately. What we can do is share those questions with both Rob and Anas after the webinar, and provide some feedback to you via email, or so that you do have the answers to those questions if you like. And if we do have enough interest in a lot of these topics, then one opportunity is that we may be able to even organize some further webinars down the road with these topics. So I wanted to thank you for, you know, your time and answering all of those questions. If everyone here would like to learn more about the work that Rob does with ZooCheck and the work that Anas does in Palestine, you can visit their websites for their organizations. New Generation's website is still under development, but you can visit them on their Facebook page for New Generation Organization, and the group that they collaborate with, the Palestinian Animal League. You can find them at pal.ps/EN, and that's for their English page. And ZooCheck can be found at zoocheck.com. So thanks, Rob and Anas, for sharing your wisdom with us, your experiences with us. I also want to say a big thank you to our partners, the Sindh Education Foundation, because without you and without all of the master trainers, this program wouldn't happen, and it wouldn't be able to work. If anyone would like to learn more about their organization and the work that SEF does, you can visit them at sef.org.pk. And if you'd like to learn more about Join Hands, you can visit us at joinhands.org. So our next webinar will take place on February 9th. We'll be joined by the CEO of the Global Schoolhouse Initiative in Canada and the heads of research and education from the Donkey Sanctuary in the UK. So I hope you'll be able to join us next month. And until then, I hope you all have a happy, healthy rest of your day, a happy, healthy rest of your month, and take care of yourselves, be well, and we'll see you hopefully on February 9th. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Sabrina. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Kazi. Take care.